misconnection? I think misconnections are something that's intrinsic to human nature and experience. You've got misconnections with handsome strangers on the tube, or with people who you see when you're walking around, or sometimes even an accidental left swipe on Tinder that could have been your spouse. I think misconnections are something that's very integral to human experience, but I don't think they're something that's required. I'm going to talk to you about something that I would say was the most important misconnection in the past 2 centuries. Raise your hand if you've ever heard of Charles Darwin. Okay. That's a good amount of the room, and that's fantastic, because Charles Darwin was an incredible man and an incredible scientist. He introduced his seminal work in 1859, and he completely revolutionized just about every field there was. He was changing science, philosophy, religion, how Victorian people lived. He changed absolutely everything, because I think he spoke to a very important idea inside all of us. The idea that something so large and with such variety as life could come from something so small as the beginning of life. So he's amazing, and his work continues to be important today. But he's also only half of the story. Raise your hand if you have seen the man on the right of the stage before. It would be difficult because there wasn't a man on the right of the stage. So raise your hand if you've seen the man on the right of the stage before. Okay, that's a lot less people. I'm counting maybe 3. And I think that's a real shame. I think Gregor Mendel was in many ways as and more important as Charles Darwin. He was almost the missing piece to Charles Darwin's puzzle. He was a very particular man who grew up to be a friar in what is now the Czech Republic. And in the monastery gardens, in between the years of 1856 and 1863, he experimented on 29,000 pea plants. And he found out this fact. This time it worked. Raise your hand if you understand exactly what that means. Okay, all right. If you don't understand exactly what that means, or even if you just want to refresh yourself on the idea, I'd suggest that you do what neither Darwin nor Mendel could do, and Google it. So, why is that one of the most important misconnections in the past 2 centuries? Because had Charles Darwin, at his sprightly 57-year-old age, when Gregor Mendel published his paper in 1866, been able to see Mendel's work, he would have realized the giant hole in his idea of speciation, and the whole science of genetics would have started 40 years earlier. And 40 years doesn't seem like a lot. It's a lifespan. But it is also the time in which we have gone from being unable to sequence even the smallest bacterial DNA to each of you specifically being able to go home, send off 2,000 pounds, and get your own human genome sequenced, which is absolutely fantastic, and you should do if you have 2,000 pounds to spare, which you probably don't because most of you are students. I think that is the most important misconnection in the past 2 years for me. But I think what's a lot more important is the most important misconnection in the past, well, the past whenever, for you. We live in an age of information at this point. We live in an age where every single piece of information we could want is at the click of our fingertips. My little sister is the most important person in the world to me. And I find it completely amazing that if she wants to know what an elephant is, I can tell her everything she'd ever want to know about elephants from Google. I think all of us had a time when we were a very curious child. We had a sense of childlike wonder. And I'm asking you all today to try and reclaim that childhood wonder. If there was ever something that you wanted to do or that you wanted to know about and you never got to, I'd say to think about it now. I want everyone to think about it now. Think about the things, or the few things, or the many things, or anything really, that gets you going, that keeps you curious, that satisfies your thirst for knowledge. And take it in your brain, and when you go home, look it up. Find out what happens. Go down the rabbit hole. Because you cannot let your life end on a missed connection.